Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. My name is Sandy Reichel. I'm the Wahkon mayor, and I'm also a resort owner in this town. And I would like to welcome you all to our little city here. We're all here tonight to talk about issues I think that are very important. I know in my business as a resort owner, you can't even make a living anymore. It's by the treaty rights and gill netting the lake has just caused such a problem. I've owned it for 13 years, and I've watched it steadily go down. And as a fisherwoman before, that's what drew me to this area, was fishing. And I remember our stringers of beautiful fish where it was worth it to come up here and go fishing. It's not anymore. I don't know if any of you are in the resort business, but people don't come up for a 2-inch slot limit. They don't come up when they hear all the fish we're having to throw back and die. We watch it all happen. It's so ridiculous. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's black and white. It's real easy to fix. Take the nets out of the lake and let's see what happens. I get very, I don't know, like tongue-tied, I guess, because I get so mad at the way our government is not protecting us and our rights. And all American citizens, tribal and non-tribal, our rights are being violated every day. And it's very frustrating. And at a local level, we are fighting the issue of whether this is reservation land or not. And we have all the documentation showing it is not. It is not. It's been gone for a long time. And yet we still see in the paper State of the Band address that nope, it still exists. And I feel like just because you stand on top of a building and say that it still exists, doesn't mean it does. We have the proof. Why can't we have it just right out there and finally ruled on? Because the city of Wahkon is not on a tribal reservation. There's a few pockets of trust lands in this community, and our government, our county, our state, they do support us. I worry what will happen if the band tries to build something in our city without a permit or not pay property taxes in our city, the land that they owned here. What are we as a little city going to do to fight against that big machine? And we would have to. I would have to stand up. We'd have to fight it. And so the more groups we get like this together to fight together, the better off we'll be. I've been out to Washington, D.C., the lobby or the people out there are just, they nod their head at you, and that's about all you get is a lot of, okay, we'll see what you can do. They don't even know a lot of it's going on. So I'm very thankful that our county representatives are behind us and they've supported us, and I'm very thankful for that. And hopefully something will come out of this if we keep just pounding at the door. And I always tell my council that every time the band says this is reservation land, I will say this is not. It's been long ago disestablished, and that's, we just have to keep plugging at it. So I could go on about a lot of different issues that we've all been through, but I would like to introduce Howard Hansen and let him speak. Thanks again for coming this evening, and I hope to hear from all of you what you have to say. And here's Howard.
Thank you very much, Sandy. I've been to Washington with Sandy a couple times, and quite an experience going there with the Citizens Equal Rights Alliance. Citizens Equal Rights Alliance is the only group in the umbrella group in the nation that works with tribal members, trying to protect the constitutional rights, the equal protection of the law of all citizens in so-called Indian country. I've been a student of the American Indian movement for 25 years. I fought gill nets since 1978. Started with the Save the Game Fish Committee, which was fighting the white netters on Lake of the Woods and Rainy Lake. Brought that battle down to the Capitol in 1980, and we bought out the white netters in 1983. And in hindsight, they let us win that little battle knowing that treaty rights were coming. And then we started seeing the protests at the landings in Wisconsin, and then we started studying federal Indian policy and the American Indian movement. AIM was formed in Minneapolis in the 1960s. And to go back in history, in the late 20s, John D. Rockefeller, according to Susan Bradford, who wrote a book called Lynch about Jack Abramoff, who was lobbying for the tribal casino industry a few years ago. In her book, she stated that John D. Rockefeller formed a think tank in Washington, D.C. and New York out east in the late 20s, and they started lobbying to use the tribes to control the valuable territory in the national security interests of our country, where there was oil and coal and other valuable natural resources. And so they created a bill called the Howard Wheeler Act, or the Wheeler-Howard Act, which became the Indian Reorganization Act. The Indian Reorganization Act took away the rights of the citizens. It stopped assimilation and started using the tribes to control territory. Then, 50 years later, in Minneapolis, the American Indian Movement was formed, and the big food companies said, that's working so good for big oil and big coal, we want to get the fish in the mix. So they started AIM, which started immediately, went to Washington State and did the Bolt decision for the fish, and then to Wisconsin and Michigan, and finally to Minnesota. And so AIM changed our country, because not only do they go for treaty rights, they go for tribal sovereignty. We started reading about treaty rights and tribal sovereignty gradually in the 70s and 80s, and then more in the 90s. And we hadn't heard treaty rights for 70 years, 80 years, between 1880 and the late 50s, 60s, or the late 60s. And so all of a sudden now we have two sets of laws on the land, apartheid, and it's all corporate funded by big corporations that want to steal the resources from the citizens, privatize the wealth from all the resources, but socialize the budget deficits. And so we, the people, are paid for all the social costs, all the housing, all the healthcare costs of these people. And other armies that the people that lobby for this, the big powerful corporations and their owners, they've built armies where they tax exempt money. So for like 60, 70 years, they have tax exempted billions of dollars, which have created budget deficits. And they keep making these armies bigger with more tax exempt dollars and more budget deficits. And just recently, an example of how they privatize the wealth. A week ago Friday up at Lund's, walleye was $22 a pound. Now up here locally, Joe Feligy, he has written about what's the cost of these walleyes. I've been writing about that. I wrote budget deficit posters, poof bucks I call them, at our Capitol rallies 20 years ago, because when they net the fish and truck it out of town for $3.50 to the local community, a sports fisherman might spend $50 or $100 a pound. And so you have these poof bucks as the fish get trucked out to the supermarkets. Well, at Lund's the other day, they were $22 a pound. So the supermarket, I don't know what they bought them, paid for that, but it was maybe $5, $6. So they're making money. The corporation is making money. But what was the cost of that $22 pound of fish? When you consider that all of the tribal members that are enslaved to produce the resources to these corporations, what's the cost? How many of them are there? There's several million. They all get free housing. And I'm not blaming the Indian now, my Indian neighbors and friends. We have a lot of Indian friends. They are just pawns in this evil game. And so, but us citizens, just our health care. You know why Obama and Clinton wanted public health care? Because it's getting so big they can't hide it. And when you look at all the costs, the drugs, the alcoholism, the fetal alcohol syndrome in our public schools now, and safe haven for drug gangs, which we had up here in Minnesota and they had in New York, national articles. Now it's sexual abuse up at Spirit Lake. It's unbelievable. So, anyway, all of this stuff, the tribal sovereignty, also takes away your rights. They use these agencies that shouldn't even exist. We have a constitution. We have the best constitution ever written for mankind. And it's to protect all of our rights equally. That's a given. It's cast in stone. But since AIM, they've changed the political system. And they've started spending more and more money to elect politicians. And it's called bribery. The biggest seller of his soul is the one that gets elected. And like Mr. Obama, I've seen him on television for an hour talking about how he's going to help the majority. He's there for you, the people. And then the next day, he's passing an executive presidential order giving more sovereignty to the tribes to take away your rights and oppress you farther down the ladder. And there's no end to the oppression that's coming if we allow this to continue. This is for the heart and soul of our Constitution and our rights. Tribal sovereignty, tribal jurisdiction, tribal authority takes away your constitutional rights. And the only way you're going to fix this and stop it is to stop it right here in Minnesota where it started, number one. But I just want to tell you, we have the only group of citizens intervened in a treaty lawsuit in the United States of America. And there are treaty buses going to all the schools, indoctrinating kids. They indoctrinate the parents. They move them into low-income housing in all the school districts. They're in Hopkins, they're in South Minneapolis, East Minneapolis, St. Paul. They're probably in your school. Well, I know they're up here, but the parents go into the school and ask for a certain form, and the education starts to indoctrinate all the kids in the school about treaty rights and tribal sovereignty. And it's massive. We went to a tribal educational conference. Joe Feligy was there. Jim Diotis went with me and Renee. And Renee did a 4-page paper. It's on our website. I ran out of copies or I would have brought some up here. But it oppresses the educational system. We're the worst state in the country teaching tribal children and other minorities of color. And so if you're the worst in the United States of America, you're the worst in the world. But it's to indoctrinate our children to accept losing their rights. And it all comes down to protecting those rights. We've got to get this thing back into court. We have to educate our friends, and we have to just tell everybody this case is important to the future of our republic. I'm telling you, it's the most important case in the United States of America to keep your rights, to keep this country the way it was founded by its founding fathers. And so it's a big deal. And I just want to show you a couple other things here. The people living in the Arrowhead have lost their rights. Back in 1980, I was the only citizen in the state of Minnesota that testified against that agreement. The only citizen in the state that testified of the whole Arrowhead losing their rights. Just think about it. They lost their rights. They have no rights to go and talk about managing their land, water, air, natural resources. It's just the EPA and the tribe or some government agency with a state agency, and the citizens are out of the loop. And they get oppressed because all the wealth is going to the corporations. There's two economies in our country. The corporations with the money, and we the people with all the debt. That's what you got. And so it's worth fighting to take it back. It's going to get worse. If we don't win this case, it's getting worse. There's no limit to what they'll oppress you down to. There's no plan to fix it. None. So this case was in court when we stopped the Mille Lacs Treaty case and they pulled it. That goes clear to the Missouri River. And I've had meetings in Washington, D.C. They're coming for all of it. It's all ceded territory. You saw them net Cedar Lake a year ago this spring and Red Lake. That Red Lake, up at Lake Bemidji. That area goes clear to the Missouri. There's an old treaty that goes clear to the Missouri. And if they were test netting it a year and a half ago, don't think they're gonna, they might wait till I die, but it'll come back. It will definitely come back. And then tribal members have no rights. And in the papers here, you'll see there's 3 articles from Friendly Indians, friends of ours, that they confirm they don't have rights and they want their rights, But they're just pawns in a very, very evil game. And I just love to meet tribal members because there's just a small percentage that dare stand up to a tribal business council. They really get persecuted. And my friend Todd Fasthorse, who wrote an article in that paper, he has been just ostracized by his tribe for years and years for his stand and fighting the tribal business councils, the corruption, what they're doing to his people. And they had kids bully his kid at school. He just had to leave the Rosebud Reservation because they were having kids beat up on his kid at school. And so he left. But it's a bad deal. And I want to talk later about our plan in the paper here to get a public informational hearing. PERM has done 2 economic studies. We've got a biology synopsis study that we just completed with Dick Sternberg after the fall netting. And we tried to get a public informational hearing last year, but I could never get a meeting with David Dale. They don't want to give us a hearing. There's no question about that. And so that's why we've developed a better plan this year. Just follow the action plan on the back of that page. We'll talk about that more later. But I want to have anybody that wants to speak here tonight come up and talk. We're going to film this and put it on my Hunting Angling Club website, and just to educate people about this issue and how big it is. And I'd like to introduce my good friend Jim Diotis, who's going to talk about how his life has been changed here the last several years. Jim?
Yeah, I mainly want to talk about 2 rights. Right number 1, the right to petition the government for addresses of grievances without fear of retaliation from the government. Basically, that's right number 1, freedom of speech. Once you lose that right, all your other rights are pretty much worthless. And once you can't complain to the government about what you feel is wrong with the government, that allows the government to get as wrong as they want to get. Another right I want to talk about is basic constitutional cornerstone, and that's the right of individual self-determination, the right of the individual to determine their own destiny. When it's placed in the hands of government, that's the right to control your right of self-determination. It quickly becomes a slippery slope fast. And you look around the world at any nation that doesn't have the right to petition the government for redress of grievances, or where the right of individual self-determination is placed into the hands of government, those countries are pretty dysfunctional. And that's what we see a lot on these Indian reservations, where neither of them 2 rights really exist. big buzzword in tribal government literature is tribal self-determination, the right of the tribal government to determine your own destiny. And it's also in their literature that the right of the tribe to survive supersedes that of the individual to survive. I want to bring quite a few years ago, there was a letter sent out by Chief Marge Anderson to all the different tribal members, warning them about the Tea Party that was formed to be involved in the boundary dispute. And it says, although Tea Party sounds like harmless fun, don't be fooled by the name. Some of the people in this group are good folks, but they've been duped by the group's leaders, who are vicious racist, Indian haters, masquerading as concerned citizens. These leaders may cloak themselves in tea bags, but they couldn't be more blatant about their anti-Indian agenda if they wore white sheets. Then the chief says here, the saddest part of this latest attack is that some of the people who have joined forces with this racist hate group are actually band members. One of them went so far as to meet with the county board to criticize and accuse our tribal government. Well, that's pretty bad. You go to complain to a tribal government, to a county government, and then the leader sends out a letter to everyone saying to give this guy the cold shoulder, basically. That's Vince Hill who went to complain. Then their public relations and lobbying director for the Mille Lacs Band, Ron Max, he went right on KSTP radio as a guest host and said, I don't understand people like Bill Lawrence, and Bill Lawrence was a Red Laker, and he had a newspaper, the Native American Press, that exposed a lot of what was going on in reservations. I don't understand people like Bill Lawrence and Vince Hill. If I were an Indian, I'd take them out behind the barn and kick their ass. And then he takes off on Bill Lawrence some here. They took off on Marge on the unfortunate incident that happened in her family and accused her of some things which was really wrong. I'd love to have 2 or 3 minutes alone in a room with him and let him take the first shot. I think it'd be a lot smoother if there weren't guys like Bud Grant, Bill Lawrence, and Vince Hill and that whole conglomerate of people. If I were Native American, I'd take them behind the barn and dress them piece by piece. And I hope the days of Bill Lawrence's are gone, done, him and Bud Grant. And let's see here. And then that Ron Max guy, he was best friends with that lottery director who committed suicide and was getting $200,000 a year from the Minnesota State Lottery for his Taste of Minnesota event. Criminal investigation went to Ramsey County Attorney Susan Gattner, whose husband, John Woodley, Governor Ventura's chief of communications, sits on a bank board with Chief Marge Anderson. And among the lottery director's regular poker playing buddy friends were Jerry Sikorsky, the tribe's federal lobbyist, who was thrown out of Congress for a check-kiting scandal, Senate Majority Leader Roger Moe, and Chief Marge Anderson. Lottery director knew her so well he referred to her as his own sister. Any good county attorney would have reclused herself from the case, being as her husband was good friends with all the lottery director friends, but that didn't happen. Let's see here. Vince Hill wrote a letter. Marge Anderson sends race-baiting letter to the Mille Lacs Band members. Silencing policies directed at all forms of dissent continue to exist on the Mille Lacs Reservation today. The grassroots Anishinaabe, with virtually no civil rights on federal Indian reservations, is not alone in his/her status of citizen disenfranchisement. Vocal non-Indians or whites employed by or doing business with the Mille Lacs Band of Chippewa are also subject to sovereignty, harassment, and intimidation. Trumped-up charges can readily be devised, whether through legal bureaucratic procedures or as a result of outright lies. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you have noticed a lot of situation out in New Jersey with Governor Christie, where 2 of his employees used their government position to retaliate against political opponents, and they were immediately fired. But you see this all the time going back and forth between Chief Melanie and Chief Marge Anderson, anytime one of them gets elected, there's massive firings at the tribal government center, the casinos, and their other businesses. The first thing they do is use their political position to retaliate against their political opponents. And, government lets them get away with it. These politicians like Al Franken and all them guys know exactly what's going on, but being as they get big campaign contributions from them, they accept it. In fact, over the past 20 years now, the Indian tribes and casinos have been the biggest donor to the DFL party there is. And this is something you should be kind of be concerned about, because what is a casino? A casino is just a way of tricking people out of their money. That's the very definition of somebody you can't trust, and they're the main #1 controlling factor in our state now. All the Indian casinos put together are the biggest lobby controlling St. Paul now, and they got their fingers big time in all the other big lobbies: Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, Teachers Union, political organizations like Women League of Voters, you name it, they're there. And also, before these Indian casinos started, there were no casinos in Minnesota. The casino industry was mainly based in Las Vegas and Atlantic City, New Jersey. So a lot of money came in here from out of state to get our politicians to go along with this Indian casino thing. And these Indian casinos are not about helping out the Indians. The Indian casino thing is just a way to place casinos in places the casino otherwise wouldn't normally be able to have them. And they were able to have them here in Minnesota once they discovered political correctness and tribal sovereignty. So you look at the situation in Minnesota, they say it's to help the Indians, but the most successful casino is the Mystic Lake in Shakopee. 200 of them, they get $1 million a year. And down in Shakopee, there's plenty of jobs and colleges and stuff down there. Then you look at the biggest three, Leech Lake, White Earth, and Red Lake, it helps them out the least. So here you got a situation that's supposed to help the Indians, yet the smallest numbers of them who need it the least, it helps the most, but the ones who need it the most and have the biggest numbers, it helps them the least. And you see it on a national scale too. The two biggest Indian casinos are both in Connecticut, where there are no large populations of Indians living out in the middle of nowhere. And both totally invented reservations, totally invented tribes, both owned by foreigners too. And a lot of people are just really scared of speaking out against the tribe here. They might lose their job, or if they have a business, might lose some Indian customers or stuff like that. And also, this fear is really in our schools big time. You try and say anything against a tribal government position, they'll label you right away as racist and stuff. In fact, Mary Sam, who's on the local school board here and also works for the community college in Brainerd, she showed up with a busload of Indians over there in Isle. They all joined the Lakes Association and voted themselves on the board of directors. And Mary Sam stayed there by example. She talked about a 4th grade classroom in Onamia where the teacher held a discussion on world racism. When the teacher asked the students if they thought racism existed locally, Sam said, "A student noted perm in the Tea Party. They hate Indian and my dad's a member of the Tea Party," the student had said, according to Sam. And that's what they're out to teach all your kids, that anyone who disagrees with the netting or anything like that is a racist. And I think this is really sad, where a teacher gets a 4th grade classroom to go on a witch hunt for racists. That actually includes turning in your own parents. And I'd like to end with that one, let anyone else speak. Actually, I could talk for a long time on this subject, but there's plenty of documentation how all these tribal governments are real terroristic against anyone who says anything that doesn't agree with them.
I'm Renee Thurston. I know some of you I don't know. I am now the treasurer for the Hunting and Angling Club. Anyone that would like to help, get involved, or donate, on the back of the paper is a form to do so with my number, my email address, and our P.O. box. I also have cards out if you would like. I have cards out on the table along with the papers. And I hope you'll join us and help us along. It's going to be a long haul, as it already has been, but I think we just need to gear up again and move forward. Thanks.
This will be a long journey. Nothing comes easy in politics or the legal system. So anyway, did Brooks come? No. Anyway, one of you gentlemen want to talk from Rice? Tell us about your club, or just give some personal experiences, deer hunting, any kind of hunting, fishing. Little personal testimony, living with treaty rights. Anybody? Mary Jebney? No. Bill?
It's nothing I really, it's not that I haven't suffered as along with everyone else, but, there's different things going on every day, DNR and their lies and stories and, everything you mentioned is all a big mess, and it's just got to be sorted out.
Right.
And little by little, groups like this, I'm involved in a group, there are other groups that are trying to, bring this to some sense, and so I guess that's,
Right.
I don't really want to say too much more than that, I guess.
I'll talk a little bit about a plan, and then Dave, would you like to talk after?
I really don't have anything, Howard, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the offer.
Yeah. Okay. Jan?
I'm just here to.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're glad you came. Thank you very much. We've got 30 years of experience lobbying and going to the capitals. And it's a gut-wrenching deal to go down there and lobby because it's so hard to reach, get meetings. And now it's greatly changed from when I first started like 30 years ago. When we stopped the white netters, people crossed the aisle. And I was very fortunate. I had a guy named Brad Stanius, who was a legislator, and he was a go-go guy in the Republican Party. But there were a whole bunch of young Democrat Party members that they became the wood ticks. They called them the wood ticks. There's about 13 or 15 of them. And after a 3-year stint over there, I really threw my heart and soul into it. I got to know most of them quite well. And they crossed the aisle and voted with me, or with the people. We stopped the netting. And it was a lot of fun. But now you go over there and it's harder to get people to talk to you even. And they've got this divisive attitude of two parties, and that's why I formed a party when I formed the Resource Sentinel, to build a platform. And I got a beautiful platform to fix this whole mess. And it's called the Constitution of the United States and the equal protection of the law for all citizens. So pretty simple stuff, but to get it going is hard. And you got to free the Indian people, number one. And that's our 5th plank, which frees the Indian people from the trust. And we also have a petition on the website. If you go to the Hunting and Angling Club website, there's an action plan. 2014 legislative session plan. Click on it, up pop the letters. Are in the handout, the newspaper I handed out. And there's signature page. You just tell all your friends, print out the signature page, sign it, send it to the politician. And if everybody does that, it isn't going to happen if the public doesn't do anything. And so I've sent the files to my database, but then it behooves every sportsman and hunter and angler and citizen to keep it moving, or that treaty bus is going to get to the museum in Washington, D.C., and it's going to be all over. You're going to lose your rights. And so if the people don't react to this, we're going to be like Canada, you know. And people in a third of the state, all of 1837 treaty area here, you've lost your rights to have any say in the management of your resources. That's terrible. Read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. You've got rights. And they can't change it. It's cast in stone unless they get 2/3 of the states to change it. And I don't know where the power, I think it comes from the Declaration of Independence. You always hear about the health, welfare, and happiness of the people. And every legislative bill and every court ruling is supposed to be for the health, welfare, and happiness of the people. But now they send out booklets of the Constitution. If you get it from the 4 presidents that I got one from a few years ago, doesn't even have the Declaration of Independence in there anymore. You know, and I just read a great book on Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and he's at the top of my Resource Sentinel website, my new site. Back in August, they wiped my website off the web. It just disappeared, just like that. And then they told me, in the Resource Party website, there was one back page still on there. But they took out both my websites, just like that. And earlier in the summer, I lost my emails for 6 weeks, and Comcast and Network Solutions lied to my geek every day. Just lied. So it's a tough battle we're in, believe me. And but we just got to keep coming. So now I've got 2 better websites with pictures, boat parades, the old boat parades. Leonard Thompson, when he came and attacked Bud, and he's on there. And a lot of you are on there too. So, but I just want to tell you, this is important. And if we can't get the ball rolling, we're going to lose our republic. And like I said, the whole Arrowhead, the White Earth Reservation, the Leech Lake area, the Red Lake clear up to the northwest angle, the Minnesota River Valley, all those people have lost their rights. And the corporations get all the resources, you get all the debt. Simple as that. And it's all unconstitutional. If you read the principles of the Constitution, they can't have monopolies. We got monopolies. We're supposed to have antitrust regulations. They've just got rid of them. Wall Street cheats. I got a big Wall Street cheat sign on my Resource Sentinel website. They have naked shorting. They can just steal your money, like the last few days, day before yesterday, before that, about all last week. Just bang, they stole your money. A couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, they took 30% of the wealth of our country. Just bang. So if we don't take something back here and get our rights back, and it's going to be hard because they bribe the politicians, you know, but we're going to try to get this back into the court so that the landowners get a phase 2 of the trial, which they were denied. And I've got on my Resource Sentinel website, go there, I've got a 5-minute little history of the Mille Lacs Treaty case on YouTube. Just listen to it. And then both websites are filled with facts about your rights. There's testimony of, there's an article, William Barclay Allen on the Indian Reorganization Act, how the government has no authority to do what they're doing. None, it doesn't exist. It's just money. They're just taking money and committing treason, you know, against we the people. And all I've been trying to do for 30 years is protect the citizens and start a revolution, you know. But everybody's busy, and we've been slowly losing. And maybe we'll just lose it. I don't know. But I'm going to go to my grave fighting to keep them. I'm not giving up my rights, is what I'm saying. I'm trying to lead you in a good plan to help you keep yours. And I think this is about the best plan that I can come up with that I have this year for this legislative session. We tried to get a hearing last year, but now we've got a little better plan, you know, to get some help to ask for a hearing. They certainly weren't going to give me one, you know. But if you all get your friends, if you all get to work and send my emails around, forward everything, and get people doing what it says in that plan, we at least got a chance to give them some trouble, and we will gladly go back to the Capitol steps in April and start doing what we did 20 years ago, till we get the hearing, you know. And if they don't do something, we'll just sue them. I think we have the perfect civil rights argument. You know, we've been harmed, lake is destroyed, and it is a prime time to go and nail them with all this stuff. And our plan is to present it at an official legislative hearing. And then if they don't do something, then take action, you know. And maybe if they don't do anything, we can take action too. And but anyway, and I know there's other legal teams involved, and you know, we should all just study, talk, debate, take the best route, and go to win this thing and save our republic. It's definitely worth fighting for, you know. Any questions?
I just heard on the radio or TV this evening that the chief of Black's tribe is out visiting Mr. Obama.
Oh, they're there every week, yes. Yeah, he hosts parties. I heard him a while ago, he's talking about protecting the majority for an hour and a half one day on television. It just went on and on. Next day he's passing the presidential executive order strengthening tribal sovereignty. I mean, it's just, which just really takes away your rights and oppresses you more, you know, so.
Nolan is the one
Right.
that invited the chief.
Right.
Nolan.
Yeah, right.
In the audience for the
Yeah.
presidential address.
Mr. Mayor, you want to come up and close the party?
I'd like to say something.
Oh, sure.
Just listening to everybody, some
Yeah.
things came to mind for myself as well. And I know what I have learned in my short time, I mean, Howard has been doing this forever. Many of you have been doing this for years upon years. And I have had maybe a year and a half. And I am here to tell you that these things that are happening to Howard when he talks are so very real. I know a lot of times people don't believe it. It's no way does that happen in our country. It does, and it happens constantly. I have been witness to it. I've experienced it. And even though he talks and everything he says is very real, nobody wants to hear it. And then pretty soon on the news, you're hearing the same thing, but it's coming from somewhere else. My thoughts are that's because they want to rein in the people before Howard, you know, to their own way of thinking. And I know there's a lot of groups going out right now, and I don't think it matters that there's so many. I think what matters is that they're all attacking the same thing. I know last week on Channel 4, out of the blue, you don't hear anything. And out of the blue, I hear, oh, the DNR is now going to do a test of the, you know, Mille Lacs lakes and do their own, you know, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, the same thing that Howard has already done and Perm did and everyone has done. Now the DNR is going to go do it. Well, why now? Everybody's been screaming at the state, screaming at the DNR, but now last week they've decided they better go do their own study, you know? And I think it's because they're hearing everybody's sick of it, and I think everybody's got to stop fighting amongst themselves and get together and get out there and do something. If we don't, we're all going to fail. Period. Everybody. So, and I have to tell you, when I did my paper on the education, I was shocked. There's more, if you want to live in our country or you want to meet the standards our state has set forth or the federal government has set forth, you need to know more about the sovereignty of the that the treaties provide for the Native American people. We don't hear about the sovereignty of the states, us as individual states, from our federal government. That doesn't exist. We're all teaching our kids and the people coming to our country that they need to understand the treaties more so than anything else. That is wrong. If we don't stand up and do something, they're going to infiltrate everywhere. Our schools, which are our next presidents, we have to start at ground level, education with the children, to change the mindset. In the meantime, we have to get out there and save our lakes, save our jobs, and whatever else we can possibly grab with the little bit of time we have and the no money we have. So I just want to put it out there that we need to start working together rather than separately. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for coming, and I agree with her as far as the children. I mean, we all know what it's like, and as a resort owner, I've had we used to have a launch, run a launch service, and we've had a time where I've had tribal friends on the launch with their children and my grandchildren, and the kids they caught a fish. Well, the tribal child was able to keep it, and the family said, yeah, keep it. And my granddaughter caught a fish and it was not in the slot. She had to put it back. She didn't understand it. To me, that's instilling prejudice in the smallest of minds. How can we expect it not to infiltrate every part of our lives if we allow that our children to know that why is that? Because of the color of your skin. It goes against everything the United States is about. So I thank you all for coming too and listening and being a part of this, and I hope someday we'll be fighting for other causes because this will have been won. So thanks for coming tonight, and I appreciate it, and we'll see you all soon, I hope. Thanks.